Thank you, Chairman Lobiondo. Mr. Lipinski, I just want to again commend this committee for the deep dive that you continue to do into certification and our ability to be able to get product to market. So it's vitally important to us as manufacturers and for the jobs that we provide in the nation. It is a lot of jobs, 1.2 million jobs, and the world has really changed since the economic downturn. We now export 50% in virtually every segment of general aviation. So even piston aircraft, 50% of those aircraft are going overseas because it is an expanding market. It's a growing pie. The rest of the world is waking up to general aviation as well as commercial aviation. And that's why I'd like to start with just voicing my extreme frustration in what we heard in the first panel today. The United States Congress unanimously last year passed the Small Aircraft Revitalization Act, both chambers unanimously. The President signed into law the Small Aircraft Revitalization Act Thanksgiving last year. It requires that the FAA have this rule done by December of next year, 2015. And yet we had the Associate Administrator come up here this morning and say, no, we're going to be 2 years late. Now, we've worked on this whole initiative since back in 2007, so it's nothing new. And the FAA coined the term twice the safety at half the cost. So think about that. We're talking about doubling the amount of safety in the light end of general aviation and reducing the cost by half to both the government and industry, and yet the bureaucracy is saying, we don't care what you, Congress, say. We don't care what the President says. We're going to get it done when we want to get it done, and it's going to be 2 years late. And that's exactly what we have to put up with industry. One of the questions earlier today was predictability. We have no predictability. And when you're in a development program that you're trying to certify aircraft, and your burn rate in a large aircraft program is $10 million a month, and yet you don't have any predictability of when it's going to get done, how are you going to be profitable in this industry? How are you going to continue to employ folks in this industry? We have got to make this change. And to Chairman Schuster's comment about 20 years for cultural change, we don't have that amount of time. And we heard about this continually in the last panel, cultural change. We have got to be able to give tools to managers to drive this change. This is the new world. We're not going to get more resources for the FAA. We've got to let managers manage. We've got to measure the workforce. There is resistance within the workforce to be individually measured. We've got to incentivize these different offices so that those that underperform and are not allowing industry to use their delegation authorities don't get the same bonuses that those that are at the other end of the scale that are allowing us to use those. And we have to be able to force the FAA to do things that they tell industry that they're going to do, such as sequencing, as you heard this morning. Again, they are well behind after talking about it for 2 years. Now, on the consistency of regulatory interpretation, the 313 portion that you all wrote into the law in the last reauthorization, our frustration is very high there, too. 1,000 authorizations and certifications are awaiting through the flight standards portion of the FAA right now. Think about that. 1,000 roadblocks are in place. Now, this is for new charter operators. It's for new flight schools to be able to go and train more pilots. And it's for repair stations. Each one of those is directly translatable to jobs. And now you put that in the context of the fact that you have an FAA that duplicates expertise in many offices around the country, and if you have one inspector that says, okay, it's all right to do it, another inspector in another office can say, no, I don't accept what that FAA inspector said. That's not good enough for me. This is the way I look at it. How are we as industry supposed to do business in an environment like that? So it's vitally important to us of the work that this committee is doing, the great questions that you all asked in the previous panel, and we ask you to continue the pressure, because it's only through pressure from the United States Congress that is going to drive the change that we need for industry to be able to keep moving in aviation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Wish next time you could be a little more clear about how you feel on this whole thing. Very well done, sharing a lot of our frustrations, capitalizing it. That's part of what we're continuing to attempt to do here.